Thank you, Dr. Arvind Prasad. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and comfortable wherever you are. I want to start by thanking each of you for taking the time to join us today. We are thrilled to have you with us for this online session. I understand that in the world full of distraction, especially in a virtual setting, your presence here is truly appreciated. As we begin, let's remember that despite being in different locations, we are here for a shared purpose. This session is designed to be an opportunity for learning, collaboration, and growth. I encourage you to engage fully, ask questions, share your thoughts, and take full advantage of the interactive elements we have prepared. We have an exciting agenda lined up, and I'm confident that by the end of this session, we all walk away with new insight and ideas that we can apply moving forward. Once again, welcome, and let's make the most of our time together today. Now, let's get started. I would like to hand over this session to Dr. Sarita, today's organizing coordinator and head department of botany, Government Degree College, Budaun, to welcome our resource person. Dr. Sarita ma'am, please join us.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, participants. Today we have Dr. ACCREDITED Yadav as our resource person. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. ACCREDITED Yadav, who will be presenting on the topic of research and development. Dr. Yadav is the coordinator of the MANATMA Mission Teacher Training Center at HANSRAJ College, University of Delhi. He holds an MPhil from the School of Economics and PhD from FMS at University of Delhi. Dr. Yadav has published numerous research articles in various reputed national and international journals and has conducted many faculty development programs, showcasing his commitment to enhancing academic standards and research practice.
This meeting is being recorded.
Recent recognition includes a Best Paper Award for his presentation on strategies for revitalizing the carbon market in India at an international conference. On the behalf of organizing team GDC Budaun and on behalf of all participants, we formally invited you to continue this session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Sarita. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. And my screen is also, my presentation is also visible to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I will not be able to put the slide in a slideshow mode. There's some technical issue with my system. So yeah, I'll keep on changing. Whenever you feel that I am stuck on the slide, please just remind me in between the session, okay?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Sarita, for such a warm and welcome. I will, without much ado, I will start the session. So today's session is with respect to research and development, and I'm sure we already have had one session with Dr. Anurag. So I will be talking about more on the lines of the basics of research that we as academicians, we as faculty members must be acquainted with. So I will not be covering the concepts in depth, but I will try to touch upon the nuances of the different concepts that we have. Okay. So to begin with, I usually begin my talk with this model, which is MAC interactive model of research design. It is a framework that revolutionizes how we approach the research process. Now, when we talk about in the traditional view, research design is often seen as a linear path with fixed steps from start to finish. However, Maxwell's model challenges this by recognizing research is dynamic, it is complex, and it is an iterative process. And at the heart of this model, Maxwell's model, there are three critical components: research questions, research methods, and interpretation. So rather than these elements as separate entities, Maxwell emphasizes their interconnectedness and need for a continual as well as reflection throughout the research journey. Now, imagine research as a vibrant conversation. We start with our research questions, which guide our explorations and shapes the method we choose to employ. But here is the twist. Now, as we delve deeper into our study, new insights emerge, data unfolds, and perspectives shift. So Maxwell's model acknowledges this fluidity and encourages us to adapt our research design accordingly and at multiple times during the entire journey. This model reminds us that research is not just a one-way street, but rather a dynamic process of discovery and growth. And we must be open to revisiting our questions, to refine our methods, and to reevaluate our interpretations as we uncover new layers of understanding. This model is what empowers the researchers to navigate the complexities of their inquiries with agility and with insight. It invites us to engage in a continuous cycle of inquiry, reflection, and refinement, ultimately leading to deeper insights and more robust findings. Okay, so the participants are marking their attendance in the box. If you have any query during the session, please feel free to post the queries in the Q&A section. Moving on. So this is what a typical research process looks like. We begin with first identifying the research problems. The process begins with clear and focused research problem or question, and this is what sets the foundation for the entire study. Then we review the literature. We conduct a comprehensive review of existing literature to understand the current state of knowledge on the topic, to identify the gaps, to refine the research question. Once we have reviewed the literature, on the basis of the literature reviewed, we know where we stand. So we formulate our hypothesis, we frame our research questions. Usually researchers develop hypotheses in experimental designs, experimental research, and research questions in descriptive or what we call as correlational research. Then once we have formulated the hypothesis and framed our research question, then we finalize the design of the study, the research design. So we select the appropriate research design that will align with the research objectives and hypothesis questions. And this could be an experimental research design, or a correlational design, or a descriptive, or a quasi-experimental design, depending upon the requirement of our study. After we have finalized the design, then we go to the next step, that is sampling. We as researchers, we determine the target population and select a sample that would represent the entire population. So we have different sampling techniques. We have probability sampling techniques, we have non-probability sampling techniques. So again, depending upon what suits our context the best, we choose the sampling technique so as to ensure that the sample that we choose must be representative or a true representative of the entire population. Once we have finalized the sampling technique, then we move on to the next step, which is data collection. Now, data collection, there are different tools for data collection. And if you talk about social sciences, then there are certain standardized instruments, there are surveys, there are questionnaires, structured questionnaires, there are open-ended questionnaires. Another tool is observation also, or we can have secondary sources of data also. For example, for Indian economy, we have a lot of data on macroeconomic variables from RBI's, that is Reserve Bank of India's database on Indian economy. We have statistical handbooks by RBI, wherein we are, given the data. Similarly, we have, NSSO's household level data is also with us. So we have two sources. Primary sources are the ones wherein we collect the data ourselves. It can be via interview, it can be via a structured questionnaire, it can be via a standardized instrument, it could be a focus group discussion is another technique for data collection. Yeah, and obviously we have certain advantages of using certain techniques, and then there are also certain disadvantages or limitations, we can say. So we ensure that collection methods are reliable, are valid, and ethical. So reliability and validity, these are two important concepts of research. Whenever we talk about research instruments, so all the research instruments that we are going to employ in our research are supposed to be reliable and valid. So we are going to talk a bit in brief about reliability and validity in a few minutes. So these are two important pillars of research, reliability and valid, which we as researchers, as academicians, must ensure that our studies are reliable as well as valid. So once we have collected the data, then we analyze the data. Now there are various statistical software and techniques to data. Now this could be descriptive statistics, this could be inferential statistics, we have regression analysis, we have other advanced analytical methods, again depending on the research design and the object. We have a lot of tools that we're going to talk about, a lot of techniques. For example, for analyzing qualitative data such as interview, which is an open-ended interview or a focus group discussion, we have certain software like NVivo. We have MaxQDA is another software that we have, and then for primary data that we collect through questionnaire, structured research instruments, we have SPSS for that. We have SPSS AMOS is there. Then all these functions can also be performed on R, which is an openware. But yeah, it needs a little bit background on coding is required in our software, but it is a free software. That is why it is also known as an openware. Yeah. So depending upon the requirement of the objective, the research objectives, we employ certain tools and techniques to analyze the data. Then once we're done with the analysis of the data, then we move on to interpreting the findings. Okay, so researchers interpret the results of data analysis in the context of research questions or hypotheses, and we assess the significance of these findings. We try to identify certain patterns or certain relationships, and we draw conclusion based on the data. But one thing that we should always remember is that the thing with these software is garbage in, garbage out. Yeah? So the results should also make sense. They should be backed by certain grounded theories. They should be backed by the literature. So we kind of then in the next step we report and we present our finding. We try to justify our findings, and we also kind of compare where we stand in contrast to or in similarity to the previous literature, previous researchers' work in this domain, and how our study is going to be an add-on to it. So we report whether the hypothesis or the theory that we set out to prove has been supported or not, and we answer the research questions. In the last step, we consider alternative explanation for the findings that we get, and we then generalize the finding. We consider the generalizability of the findings. Yeah? We comment on the generalizability. That's the last step. And obviously, the research process does not end here. We need to also find out what outlet of the research is going to be there. We want to publish it as a research paper. Is it going to be presented at a conference? So we need to figure that out. So this is the possible sequence of the research. We have literature review, we generate and formulate the hypothesis. And also please understand that literature review is the foundation of each of the steps. What is going to be our research question or our hypothesis? Again, we get the information inputs from the literature. What is going to be the sampling technique? What is going to be the methodology? What is going to be the instrument to collect the information? Everything has its backing in the literature. So I know there are so many AI tools which we researchers have started using as shortcut to literature review, but this is one step that we should never adhere to or resort to any kind of AI tools, or maybe better we can use AI tools for better presenting and our literature findings, but there is no shortcut to the quantum of efforts that should be put into going through the literature, the previous literature, the extant literature that is available to us. Yes, this is just the sequence of what we are discussing so far.
ये अमेरिकन सिस्टम है लिखा
Now moving on, let's talk about the constructing instruments. But before that, let's also understand what are the different kinds of data that we deal with. So on the basis, and these are also the type of instruments that we have. Now, data on the basis of measurement can be categorized into these four types: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, as you can see on the slides. NOIR. N stands for nominal, O stands for ordinal, I stands for interval, and then we have ratio scale or scale data. In statistics and research methodology, data types are broadly categorized into these four categories. Now, beginning with nominal data. So, nominal data represents categories or labels with no inherent order or rank. There is no order, there is no rank. And these categories are mutually exclusive and they cannot be mathematically ranked or ordered. For example, male and female, we cannot rank these. Or marital status, married, single, or divorced. So there is no mathematical rank that can be assigned to the marital status. For example, colors, red, blue, or green. So we cannot assign any mathematical rank to it. So there's a limitation of not being able to perform a lot of mathematical functions. For example, we cannot calculate averages of these data points. Yeah? But what we can do with nominal data type is we can always have a frequency count. We can count the number of people who are married in our sample, number of people who are single in our sample, and so on. A number of male participants in our study, number of female participants. So we can always have a frequency count, but we cannot calculate the average. We cannot calculate the standard deviation. We cannot calculate the variance. So this is one of the limitations of nominal data. So categorical data, which can wherein we cannot assign ranks to different categories, is what nominal data is. Second order of data type is ordinal data. Now, ordinal data also represents categories, but with a natural order or rank. For example, your education level could be one example. Now, we have 10th pass, we have 12th pass, we have undergraduate, we have postgraduate, and we have PhD. Now we can rank this. We know a PhD must have already completed his graduation / post-graduation and his 10th metric and post-metric and higher secondary. So we can rank these. So, but while we can rank these categories from highest to lowest, but we also know that the difference between these categories is not consistent. The difference between 10th class and 12th class might not be or might be equal to or not equal to the difference between graduation and 12th, or the difference between post-graduation and undergraduation, or the difference between PG and postgraduate. So the difference is not consistent. Okay, so we can have ranking here, but we cannot say for sure that the difference is consistent. Okay, similarly we also have like socioeconomic status. Unless we assign certain value to this variable, हम लोग बहुत सारे क्वेश्चनर्स फिल करते हैं, वहां पर हम लोगों को पूछा जाता है अबाउट द सोशियो इकोनॉमिक स्टेटस. तो एक there's one way to do that we ask for the per annum income level. Yeah, and there's another way to do that we ask how do you rate your socio-economic status as low, medium, or high. Now we are not defining here. Why? And so we cannot say the difference between the high socio-economic status and medium economic status is exactly equal to the difference between medium socio-economic and low socio-economic. So ordinal data, again categorical data, which can be ranked, but difference is not uniform. Then we have interval data. Now interval data have the properties of nominal and ordinal, but they also have consistent and measurable intervals between the values. But there is a lack of true 0 point. That means ratios and meaningful differences between values cannot be calculated. Example, temperature. Now temperature is measured in Celsius or Fahrenheit. अब 0 degree temperature का मतलब ये नहीं है that the temperature is not present at all. It is an arbitrary point. Okay, 0 degree does not represent the absence of temperature, but rather an arbitrary point. And the most properties are embedded in the ratio data, which have all the properties of interval data and also have a true 0 point. For example, height, for example, weight, so age or income. So the difference between 2 years old and 1 years old uh, in month is always going to be the exactly equal to the difference between a 3-year-old kid and a 2-year-old kid. Similarly, weight between 3 kg and 2 kg versus weight between 6 kg and 5 kg is always going to be the same and uniform. So that is the ratio data, and all types of arithmetic functions can be performed on ratio data. So we always want to have ratio data for our analysis because higher level of functions can be performed on mathematical expressions can be performed on ratio data, but it is desirable, but it is not always achievable. For example, in social sciences, we have studies which are measuring relationship between certain qualitative aspects, right? For example, I want to measure the impact of say integrity or say justification. Uh, let's say integrity on students' performance. Now, I will have student performance via their results, their end semester results, which will be a ratio data. But what about the integrity? Now, there's no measure to to gauge the integrity question, but we have certain scales which have been developed. So usually these kind of scales have a Likert scale, highly dissatisfied, highly satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, somewhat satisfied, and neither dissatisfied. So that kind of scale is known as Likert scale, and we have 3-point Likert scale, 5-point Likert scale, 7-point, 9-point Likert scale. There's 4-point also. So depending upon the context and everything, we can finalize the Likert scale. So these kind of data which have which measure certain kind of attribute, honesty, integrity, interest, disinterest. So these cannot be obtained on ratio data, and hence we need to resort to certain measures, certain mathematical functions that could be performed on interval or maybe nominal and ordinal data also. So understanding the type of data is very crucial as it determines the appropriate statistical analysis and methods that can be applied on that data set. Okay, so we need to be clear about what type of data we are dealing with. Yeah. So we also need to, next up is that we need to match up the methods to the research paradigm. Yeah. So we have again quantitative and qualitative studies. So quantitative is one wherein we have standardized instruments, wherein we can establish the validity and reliability. We have constructed surveys, interview guides. Written instrument could be one. Qualitative, in qualitative studies, we do not have pre-developed questionnaires. Rather, we have certain leading questions. A pre-developed question can be there, okay, and they may be administered in no established order. They may be added. The question may be added, or they may be altered depending upon the circumstances. In quantitative studies, we have observations which are structured observations. Predetermined items are there, which can be counted in terms of frequency, in terms of duration, occurrence, permanent product, etc. In qualitative, we have more open-ended observations. We try to identify the themes and the plateau and the pattern in that. So that's about the qualitative. And then we also have third kind of study, which is mixed method studies. What does mixed method do? So researchers may seek to increase the reliability and validity quotient of any study by using both qualitative as well as quantitative study. For example, I want to understand the student psychology to not be interested in attending classes. Yeah. Or what is the reason if the number of students attending a particular class is decreasing every year after year? Now, for that, I might develop a tool or a structured questionnaire which has been used by some Western authors, and I simply collect the data from the students, I analyze the data. So that might not be suited to the Indian context. Now, to provide it more, to make it more reliable, the findings of my study more reliable, and make my instrument more valid, what I plan that I would first have certain open-ended interviews with certain sections of students who will be representing say each cluster. Now again, we will have to go for sampling. हम cluster sampling लेंगे या हम convenient sampling choose करें. So depending on the objective, say for example, I will choose certain students from ECA who are participating in dance and music societies. Then I will choose some students who represent the sports department, or the students who are participating in sports activities. Then I also choose certain students who are active in other student societies, and then a normal section who are interested in classes, but they are not attending for some reason. Yeah. So I have a sample of those, and maybe I conduct interviews and focus group studies to identify what are the factors which might motivate the students to attend the classes, and what are the factors which might might prove to be kind of an obstacle or a hindrance for making students not attend their scheduled classes. Just give me a moment, please. Yeah, sorry. So mixed method is basically also known as triangulation, wherein we use a part of qualitative study to make our study more reliable, to understand the patterns, to understand the sample psychology, and then we have a standardized instrument measuring those specific factors. Yeah? So using best of the both techniques. Yeah? So that is what is known as mixed method study. So these are certain do's and don'ts, certain tips of survey and interview construction tips. And also the survey and interview based studies are very specific. Okay, so there has to be only one measure, one concept per question. We have to keep the questions as lucid, as simple, as understandable as possible. We should not write the questions in questions को हम leading questions बोलते हैं. So we should not write questions to solicit a specific response. This is also known as framing bias. So as researchers, we should ensure that framing bias is not framed into the questionnaire. Hey, do you think you are dishonest? If I frame a question, this question in my questionnaire, we obviously know that all the participants, all the respondents are going to answer this. So we have to, certain questions should be indirectly asked, and specifically the attributional questions we are talking about. So questions should be tactful and should not invoke a social stigma. There may be filter questions. Again, when we talk about academic questionnaire, okay, certain kind of questionnaire we also see in our daily lives. For example, customer satisfaction survey, the feedback survey, wherein they ask you to rate their services on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10. So those are pretty short surveys. But when we talk about the academic surveys, yeah, or academic research, we see questionnaire of PhD scholars floating on WhatsApp groups, we are receiving it on mails, via mails, or even on LinkedIn accounts. And the questions usual size varies from somewhere around 60 to 90 questions are always there on an average. Yeah, very long questions. So I would want to put in certain filter questions to ensure that there are no unengaged responses. जैसे बहुत लोग under pressure, under peer pressure, questionnaires fill कर देते हैं by marking 3 in all the questions, all the answers are 3. So how do we identify such responses? Again, we use simple Excel tools, like we can calculate the standard deviation of all the responses across all the rows for each respondent, and we delete all the responses which have a standard deviation of 0. Standard deviation 0 होगा तो मतलब उस part